Hi everybody, Andrew here, back for another Barista Basics video. Now of course, before I get into today's video, I need to make a quick disclaimer that any opinions stated in my videos are my own. I'm not here to represent Starbucks or any other corporation or impede on any of these companies' intellectual properties or trademarks. My videos are simply just meant for fun and educational purposes. But with that said, let's go ahead and get into today's topic, which is the difference between coffee and espresso. Now, there are a lot of misconceptions about the differences between the two, but it should be known that they both come from the same plant. How they are grown and harvested is no different because they come from the same plant, the coffee cherry. Now, the differences start to express themselves through two methods, which I have listed here: the roasting of the beans themselves, as well as how they are brewed once they are ground. So, talking about our first difference here, roasting, this we spoke previously about in our last episode about how coffee is roasted to different levels. Now, espresso roast is roasted even longer than the dark roast. So it is even more bitter, fuller bodied, less acidic, as well as even more brittle and more shiny, because almost, if not all of the oil has been extracted from the interior of the bean. So that's really the only key difference for roasting. The main, more important difference between the two, I would say, is how it is brewed. So, well, first I should talk about how they are ground. Espresso beans are ground to a much finer grind as opposed to coffee. Now, of course, like I mentioned a few videos ago, coffee can be ground to different levels of coarseness or fineness depending on your method of brewing, but espresso is the finest method of all, even finer than what we would use for like a pour-over, for example. So the grinds are different, as well as how they are actually brewed is different as well. So espresso utilizes pressure to extract the liquid from the grounds. Now, this is different from our coffee because, if you use like a pour-over method, for example, that uses gravity to extract the liquid from the grounds. That's why there are these really fancy expensive espresso machines, because these machines are able to produce enough pressure to meet the criteria of being able to extract the liquid from the espresso grounds. So how they are brewed is different regarding the amount of pressure utilized. Also, the amount of time that the water is in contact with the grounds makes a difference as well. So espresso grounds are in contact with water for, on average, about 20 to 30 seconds, a super short period of time, whereas coffee the grounds are exposed to water for a much longer period of time. Now, espresso being exposed to water for a shorter amount of time allows the resulting liquid to be much more concentrated, which leads me into another misconception that espresso has more caffeine than traditional coffee. This statement is slightly true, but also slightly untrue, which I will elaborate on. So, an espresso shot, the actual amount of the espresso shot is much less than what you would get with a traditional cup of coffee. So, let's say, for example, you have an 8 fluid ounces of traditional coffee. That would contain between, on average, 70 to 140 milligrams of caffeine. Now, as opposed to espresso, which typically is served in 1.5 fluid ounces, that has 60 to 80 milligrams of caffeine. So this is where we can see this misconception start to form. The espresso is essentially just more concentrated. The caffeine is more concentrated in a less amount of liquid, which is why it is perceived as having more caffeine in it. That's also why if you were to get an espresso beverage that has several shots of espresso in it, you would feel much more energized and feel greater effects from that caffeine as opposed to your traditional cup of coffee. And yeah, actually, I was going to say something else, but I think that actually is going to be it for this video. I'll go ahead and show our differences again, and I'll just do a quick review since this content is pretty short. So the key difference regarding roasting is that espresso beans, which are the same as coffee beans, remember, are just roasted for a longer period of time. Regarding the brewing, the espresso beans are ground to a more fine powder, and they are exposed to water for a much shorter amount of time and undergo more pressure, which results in a more concentrated amount of liquid, which is why there is that huge misconception that espresso has more caffeine than drip coffee. And with that said, that's going to be all for today's video. I hope that you guys enjoyed that video, and I hope that you guys, more importantly, learned something. And I thank you guys so much for checking the video out. I hope that you guys have a great day. Thank you so much.